Welcome, everyone. Good boy, Tucker. This is learning at its most fun.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for yet another edition of Building Your Tech Stack with Redtail CRM. Today, we have leveraging your Redtail CRM data to trigger a personalized web service for each client with Hubly. And so we have our friends from Hubly joining us from Vancouver. Ron, good morning.
Good morning, Austin.
Thanks for joining us today, Ron. For those on the webinar who might not have the opportunity to meet you yet, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and specifically your role at Hubly?
Yeah, of course. I'm one of the co-founders of Hubly, and on the day-to-day, I have the pleasure of working with every new firm that we bring on board. We offer two types of onboarding at Hubly. One is very high touch, where I get to work along with my team to help each new user and firm get up and running by really addressing challenges and understanding what firms are working towards and helping them activate their existing data that they pull in. Many of our firms do use Redtail, as you know, Austin. So we do work pretty closely together on that. And on the other side of things, I also work with our engineering team, where I get to pass along a lot of that product feedback that we get through live training, through webinars, back to our team, so that we make sure that we continue building something that users love to use.
Awesome. Thanks for that introduction there, Ron. And for those who might be joining us today who might be hearing the term Hubly for the first time, can you go ahead and just maybe summarize what Hubly is and specifically what problem do you solve for advisors?
Absolutely, yeah. So Hubly basically delivers a technology that helps growing financial advisory firms deliver exceptional client service. We try to really help you visualize that dashboard of different workflows and processes to really bring to life that client relationship and the different touch points throughout it. Hubly actually syncs with Redtail. We help you eliminate having to rekey data between our platforms. And we really help you bring that Redtail data to life by leveraging workflows that you build in Hubly to structure things like your check and review processes, your new client onboarding experiences, and your long-term engagement workflows like your QCDs, RMDs, and other longer-term financial plan topics that you might review. And our goal is to help you and your team ensure that nothing falls through the cracks.
I love it. And so one really cool part of having both Hubly and Redtail is being able to take advantage of our really tight integration, Ron. Lots of data points flowing between the two platforms, and we're going to cover some of those today. But can you maybe just touch on some of the advantages or maybe the problems that are being solved when we integrate Redtail and Hubly together?
For sure. We really focus on three main things with our integration. And so with integration with Redtail right now, the first problem that we really try to solve is that to really kind of eliminate that current need to track to-dos in seemingly an endless number of places. We know that already a lot of our users use tasks in Redtail, but also even more structure their notes in a way, or activity notes in a way that they also capture to-do lists that they need to do for follow-up with a client. You might also be running Slack or a Teams where you have additional places to look, not to mention the good old sticky notes and whiteboards. So first and foremost, we try to eliminate having all these areas to look and track to-dos and really provide that one single source of truth so that you can start in Hubly, see what you have to do. You can jump over to Redtail, see the context for what you're doing, and then basically you're really working in deeper in your CRM instead of looking across all these different other places. And that goes hand in hand with the second point, which is that we really try to help you avoid needing to dig for client information. We know that your CRM has many tabs. We also know that you are using an endless number of software for the different specialized activities that you do, from risk analysis to billing, all the way through financial planning. We try to bring all that information to one place so that you can actually basically spend more time doing the work rather than digging through information. And today, Austin and I are going to actually show you how some of those fields flow back and forth with Redtail. And you can see them in both places. You can actually administer them in both places, and they're kept in sync. And most importantly, you're able to actually put them to use. And that's the last thing, is that we know that you spend a lot of time right now running reports just to figure out what to do and for who. We try to eliminate that. And we're going to show you how by actually tying in the data that you're reporting on to directly trigger the work that needs to happen. So then instead of running reports, you can actually start your day by looking at a dashboard and seeing those clients preemptively appear in the work flows and processes that they need to be in at this time of their client service calendar. So those are the three main problems that we try to address.
Awesome, Ron. Thank you for the summary there. And I kind of want to dive into this last point here about those reports and talk about maybe some of those key reports that a lot of our Redtail users are running, and maybe sort of how we can better leverage some of this data in Hubly. And so I think the one that comes to mind for me first has got to be the birthday report, the date of birth report. And so for those of you who might not be familiar, I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen over here to my contact for Mr. Kevin Malone here. And so this is what a Redtail contact record will look like. And a key point that I find in most every advisor's database is under this contact details section here, and it's the date of birth field. Now, this date of birth here serves a variety of functions in Redtail, specifically things like running a report to see when your client's upcoming birthday is. A lot of advisors like to maybe send a card in the mail or give a nice friendly phone call to their client wishing them a special day. It could also be leveraged for other things like age milestones. For example, when a contact might be eligible for RMDs. We have a report in Redtail that allows for you to discover which clients might be eligible for RMDs. But Ron, Hubly takes this further and creates that sort of dashboard effect and leverages this date of birth even further. Can you talk about how that gets leveraged in Hubly?
Yeah, for sure, Austin. So I'm going to take that screen back here to show exactly how that looks like in Hubly. So jumping over to the app, that date does appear for that same client on what we call the client card. So the client card is really home base for a client, just like that client profile is in Redtail. And so for us, that date of birth actually appears under this field or section that we call important client dates. So this allows you to organize those dates into one concise list. And of course, you can always have more dates that you track, but you just don't see that frequently. At the very top, you have that birthday, same age, hopefully, as they are in Redtail. And as Austin mentioned, we can actually leverage that birthday to help you trigger those really important workflows and activities that your team needs to do across specific milestones. So conveniently located here, when I close the client card, is exactly that dashboard that I prepared of these types of workflows, where you can see basically workflows to structure your Medicare filing and the tasks that you have to do there, your QCDs, your RMDs, long-term care, college planning, specifically for dependents. And so what you're able to do when you actually plan this workflow in Hubly, you start off by planning the tasks that you do as a part of reviewing those required distributions, verifying and notifying the client. But then you're also able to set up these automated rules that trigger the client being added when they turn a specific age, as tracked in your CRM and synced in to Hubly. And you're able to set up a rule just like this on any one of your workflows in Hubly, Austin. So basically what that allows you to do is that allows you to really plan out those long-term engagements. And by virtue of doing so, it allows you to also set up these automated triggers so that instead of running those reports every year to identify who are the clients that need RMDs this year, as a client is 6 months away in this case from turning 72, they will just appear in that workflow and notify you that there is an upcoming RMD eligibility coming up, and it gives you about 6 months in this case, the way that we set it up here, to get your stuff together, review that RMD need, and then either set it up or determine that it's not needed for the client. So
wow, awesome stuff, Ron.
Thank you.
Another key point of data in Redtail that can also integrate into Hubly is tag groups. Tag groups is how we can group together like clients in our CRM to serve some kind of purpose. And so I'm going to grab screen share back if that's okay, Ron. And we are going to look back into Redtail here. And I will go ahead and just give a quick demo here on what a tag group is and how we create them. And so a tag group usually begins its life here in the contacts tab here, where we go ahead and review our list of contacts to create, again, some kind of grouping to serve some kind of purpose. I like to start with the advanced search field here at the top. So I'm under the contacts tab here on the left, and I'm going to choose this advanced search here across the top. And so what I can do now is I can search for key data points within Redtail to be able to pull back a list of the contacts that match that criteria. An example of this would be for my contacts with the status equal to in client. Redtail is going to go ahead and search through all of my contacts in Redtail CRM, and it's going to pull me back specifically just the contacts that have been labeled as client. But Ron, let's take this even a step further. Let's say I wanted to hone in specifically on my clients that might be of high net worth. I can go ahead and click this and button here to add in another layer of criteria. And specifically now I'm going to go ahead and search for accounts where the family portfolio balance is greater than or equal to, and I can go ahead and choose my value. For this one, I'm going to go ahead and choose $500,000. Okay. And so what Redtail is going to do now is it's not only going to look for contacts labeled as clients, but it's going to specifically hone in on those with family portfolio balances greater than 500,000. And so now that I've met this criteria, what I can do is I can group these contacts together in what's called a tag group. To do so, I'm just going to go ahead and select them all here. Choose the contact options menu right here. Next, from my contact options menu, I'm going to choose bulk actions. And the third option on my bulk actions menu is to add to tag group. And so from here, I can either choose from a predetermined tag group, or if I'd like, I can go ahead and type in the name of my tag group here at the top and create a new tag group right from here. In this case, I already had a tag group set up for high net worth individuals. And so I'm going to add all 22 of these contacts to the tag group for high net worth individuals. So now, whenever I need to retrieve this list, whenever I need to know who my high worth net individuals are, I can always just go to the recently viewed menu here at the top, choose tag groups, and be able to quickly pull a list of my high net worth individuals. I scrolled a little too far there. There we go. High net worth individuals, and Redtail will go ahead and pull me back those same 22 records. But Ron, we can actually do even more with this by leveraging this data into Hubly. Can you share more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to take that screen share back. And again, we're going to start off on Kevin Malone's client card because he happens to be one of those clients that was pulled into this high net worth tag. So tags, just like many other fields, they do sync back and forth in real time with Redtail. And so when a contact in Redtail does get categorized into the tag, then the next time when you open up that contact's client card in Hubly, you'd be able to see that tag group under the list of all other synced tag groups at the bottom right corner of the client card. So if we look through this list, high net worth, sure enough, is a tag right there. So in Hubly, we really recommend using tag groups to help really determine those different needs that a client might have based on being high net worth, based on having specific types of accounts, or for example, going back to my last example of RMDs. that once the client turns 72 and an R&D need is identified, then you can simply attribute a tag in Hubly called R&Ds. And then that tag will automatically flow back to Redtail, but also can be set up to pull clients into your workflow for R&Ds on an ongoing basis using another type of trigger that we have, which is called a repeating rule. To set up a repeating rule, you simply actually go back to that workflow that we were just in, and that was over here in the service calendar and milestones. So over on the RMDs, you'd be able to just go to add a rule and select that very first option of a repeating rule. And we have that rule already set up for us right here. So repeating rule helps you actually take that tag group in Redtail and then go ahead and set up the trigger to add the client back into this workflow every so often, depending on a certain time. So going back to your example there, Austin, with the high net worth tag, we actually want to do that, use that tag and leverage for making this type of reminder for ourselves to schedule our next quarterly client review meeting or touch point for high net worth clients. We're going to meet with them more frequently. And so again, when planning your client review scheduling steps, when you reach out to the client, follow up if you haven't heard back, etc., you can actually go ahead and create that repeating rule in this very workflow to use that high net worth tag. And then based on the clients that are in that tag in Redtail, when this trigger runs next on June 1st, all of those clients that are high net worth are going to get added back into the scheduling workflow and remind you that it's time to send out that scheduling email once again. So this same notion of tag groups can be used in addition to basically adding clients in on a repeating basis for your regular workflows. They can also be used for your financial planning topics. And so when you actually comes to tracking your estate plan review or your life insurance reviews or other types of insurance reviews, you can pair your tag groups, for example, to actually track that a client has a term life policy in place. And you can create a custom client date up top to track when that term life policy is going to come due. And by pairing those two items together, you're able to create automated triggers that are going to deposit the client back into your life insurance review workflow 6 months or 3 months or a couple of weeks before that next term life date, allowing you enough time to review any changes, get any quotes, and then make sure that the client doesn't have any lapses in coverage.
Awesome stuff, Ron. Hey, while we're on this record here, I noticed that there is a comment section down there below, and that looks very familiar to the notes section in Redtail. Maybe we could talk a little bit about how notes can actually be leveraged into Hubly. But before we do that, let's make sure that we're all on the same page here. So I'm going to share back to Redtail here. And just to recap, for those who might not be familiar, Redtail is a wonderful place for you to store your client notes for a lot of reasons. For a lot of advisors, it's the reason why they have a CRM. It helps to sort of serve as that second brain of ours, right? So when we have a meeting or an interaction with a client that we need to remember 6 months to a year from now, we have a tangible way of going back in and reviewing that without having to try to store it in our memory and remember it. And so let's pull Kevin's contact back up here. So here's Kevin. And Kevin and I, we had our review meeting this morning. And it's time for me to go ahead and put some notes about that review meeting. So again, I can remember it 6 months, a year from now. And so to do that, I can click on the add note button here in the middle of my screen, or I can always head up to the quick add option and choose the option to add in a note. Okay. And so here in the body section of my note is where I can go ahead and begin to type out some of the items that Kevin and I talked about. So for example, I might say something like, met with Kevin today to talk about tax strategies for his business. Okay. Again, your notes are probably going to be a lot more detailed than mine. But here would be the start of a note where I'd go ahead and put in my notes. I can also tag that note here with a category, being able to save it specifically as a client review note. And so that way, when I'm looking for it in the future, I'll be able to run a search by this category to easily find and retrieve that specific note. Ron, one of my favorite things to do with these notes also is we have this really cool feature called note templates. So right here at the top, rather than maybe starting with a blank canvas when it comes to my notes, I can go ahead and apply a template that will go ahead and pre-fill a lot of the information that I'm going to go ahead and include on my note. So let's try it again. Let's click the add note here option. And this time, rather than starting with a blank slate, let's go ahead and choose a note template. Here's one specifically for my annual review. And notice that information is already pre-populated. So now, again, rather than starting from scratch, I can just go ahead and begin to enter my notes here, keep them in a nice, organized, consistent fashion. So that way it's easy for me to review and read next time I prepare for that client review meeting. And so lots of fun stuff that we can do here with notes. But in addition to what we can do in Redtail, Ron, we can actually leverage that information in Hubly. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, we sure can. And we love structured notes. I think we come across this time and time again with all the different firms that we work with. A lot of them do come from a background where they have notes that kind of keep track of the way the meeting went, but might not be laid out in a very efficient way to pass that information along to the rest of the team. And so giving that a little bit of thought, adding a little bit of structure, especially with those great templates that you just showed us there in Redtail, makes it a lot easier for your team and yourself to develop a little bit of muscle memory in terms of knowing where to look when reviewing a meeting note to see exactly what needs to get done. And that really helps ensure that nothing slips through the cracks, especially since you can't have your full team in every client meeting with you. In Hubly, we display those notes that Austin just created in Redtail, and we sync those as comments towards the bottom of the client card. Any notes that get created in that client contact in Redtail will appear right here in Kevin's client card. So that makes it really easy to basically for your team to find that context when they look through a client to basically see who is that client and what's being worked on right now, what are the notes left from the most recent meeting, etc. Let's say that we're doing a topic workflow for Kevin where we're doing the estate plan review as a part of our regular ongoing review process. And let's say that we go ahead and assign that very first task to Austin to complete, because Austin's on the same team as us. In Hubly, when you actually assign a task over to somebody else on your team, you have the option of creating a comment just by clicking that little comment button right on that task. And let's say that you came out of a meeting with Kevin and you know that Kevin's son just turned 18. And so that's going to trigger an update to the beneficiaries. And so you might want to tell Austin that this needs to happen. And so in Hubly, you're able to create that note directly on the task that you just assigned over. And hit add. Once that comment saves in Hubly, it's also going to be available in Redtail in real time. But more so, when Austin comes into this workflow in Hubly and selects Kevin, Austin's going to be able to see that this first task has a little comment waiting for him. And it makes it really easy to find that needle in the haystack, especially when you have many things going on for the same client. So I hope I didn't cut out in the later part there. Apologies for that earlier. But today we really wanted to show you, together with Austin, basically how all this data that you create in Redtail, Hubly can help you simplify and view this data within the client cards of the clients that you're working on. By connecting Redtail with Hubly, the goal is that you no longer have to go digging for client information and to-dos. You can pop open the client card, see what's being worked on, see the progress being made, and see all the peripheral information that you need to see at a glance. That Redtail profile is always one click away. So it lets you basically pick back up on what you're working on in Redtail just by clicking on that Redtail button and opening that up in a new tab. Hubly also helps you create those milestone-specific triggers to bring those dates and those important tag groups to life, really allowing you to no longer have to rely on running those repetitive reports. And we see many of you also keeping tedious spreadsheets where you try to track many of that same information that's already in Redtail. So we really want to help you bring that to life by connecting Redtail to Hubly and leveraging that existing Redtail client data instead of having to rekey it or run those reports on an ongoing basis. And lastly, you can continue tracking and updating key client dates, tag groups, notes, and other important information in both places, knowing that that information is going to be kept in sync with your CRM, and that's going to trigger the right activities for each client in Hubly as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Ron. Hey, if we have anybody here that's interested in maybe taking that next step with Hubly, where can they reach out to?
Great question. So we want to make it really easy for any firm to get up and running and discover if Hubly is the right solution for their team and for their challenges that you're facing. So you can simply visit www.myhubly.com/strategy call, or hit that big button on the top right of your screen if you're on our homepage. And you can schedule a free strategy call with our team where we're going to chat about your challenges, get to understand your team dynamic and what you're working towards, and help you see if Hubly is the right fit for the way that your team works and the goals that you're trying to achieve.
For those of you looking for a link, looks like Olivia just put one into the chat there. So you can go ahead and copy and paste that link there into your internet browser and go ahead and schedule that strategy call. If you have any trouble too, you also have an email address there that you can reach out to, hello@myhubly.com. We'll go ahead and get you in contact with a Hubly representative who can go ahead and get you booked for that strategy call. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you, Austin.
Thanks so much for joining us today for this particular session. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call at 800-206-5030, option 3 for support, or just shoot us an email over to support@redtailtechnology.com. Thanks a lot and have a great day.